the case of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has decided to resign. And how do you see, because when it comes to the reasons that she has mentioned in the video she published, it wasn't just the video, to the document that of her resignation were published on her X account. What was behind it? What was the necessity on her part to get out of the, because many people see her, at least we saw her as one of the most sane voice within the political parties,
Sure.
Republican Party in the United States, but she's gone. What does that mean, in your opinion?
Well, I think Trump's attacks on her are despicable. Um, I just I completely despise Donald Trump for these kinds of just juvenile personal attacks that he's levied on her, calling her a traitor. Donald Trump's the one who's sacrificing American interests to a foreign power. That's the definition of a traitor. If we're going to go down that route and start calling names, but it's just, Trump's name calling, um, from her standpoint, created a situation where she felt threatened. I think that was one aspect of driving her decision. But I think she's also um, contemplating running for either governor or senator, a higher office, and wanted to be free of any, and possibly running for president, um, but wanted to be free of the political pressures that come from being a member of Congress and having to either toe the line and vote as the party wants you to, or then get accused, as she has been, of sabotaging the president's agenda. The problem is, what she was going after, the pressure point was all over Jeffrey Epstein. And, again, Trump's conduct in protecting Jeffrey Epstein is just inexcusable. And ultimately, because of Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, and others, they forced his hand. And so Congress voted almost unanimously, the House of Representatives, to request the release of the files. Now, I don't think anything's necessarily going to come of that. They're going to continue to cover it up. This is, it's a big protection racket.
The Congressman Randy Fine, which is from Florida, your state,
Yeah,
he
fat.
came out and saying that it's a good day. That's so good that she's gone. She doesn't. But do they really believe that if MTJ is not anymore, you know, there, that's gonna help their rhetoric, their point of view, their power in terms of the way that they can influence the foreign policy of the United States?
Yeah, Randy Fine's another great example of being a disgraceful human being. He is this, um, but apart from the fact, yeah, somebody that is that grossly obese. That shows somebody who doesn't have any kind of discipline or control in their life. All right, and if I'm offending fat people, too bad. Learn to put the fork down. All right, you don't need to stuff donuts in your mouth. But apart from being obese, he is just a complete Zionist who puts the issue of Israel over that of the United States. And hey, if you want to be a quote patriot for Israel, go, yeah, do that. Go there, live there, move there, but don't do it here in my country. Don't make Israel being the number one thing that you have to genuflect before in order to be quoted American. That's wrong. So it's just he's a non-entity. I think in the next election he may have trouble getting reelected. I hope that's the case.
Yeah. Well, Larry, the 28 point of Trump's plan for the conflict in Ukraine was somehow the Europeans came out with a new plan. They want 800,000 soldiers to be part of the army, to be the army.
Yeah. Good luck finding those.
But you get the sense, you get the feeling, the way that they're thinking about the conflict. They don't want to put an end to the conflict in Ukraine. They want something else. They want to drag the war on and on, because they feel if the war goes on and on, and they continue the war, that would hugely influence Russia,
Sure.
which for 4 years we haven't seen any sort of weakness on the part of Russians. There, anytime they're talking about the conflict, they're getting more serious. They know what they want, and they're gonna get it on the battlefield. But it doesn't seem that would be completely perceived by the Europeans.
Well, they're living in an alternate reality is the polite way of describing it. Um, it would be one thing if Europe and the three major countries, Germany, France, England, had an intact and growing defense industry, and coupled with that, industrial capability. The reality is just the opposite. It's shrinking, not expanding in all three countries. It'd be one thing if their militaries were growing and they were getting equipped with the sort of the latest, greatest equipment, but it's just the opposite. That's not happening. So they continue to agitate with respect to trying to provoke a confrontation with Russia, but they literally do not have the means of carrying out such a fight. Uh, but you can't ignore, somebody who's constantly saying, "Hey, we're going to go to war with you," which is what they're saying to Russia. And so, Russia is prepared to take them on and, crush them. General Aludinov in our conversation last week made that quite clear. So, Europe seems to have like a death wish, trying to commit suicide.
Who who has published the document, Larry? It was the United States, because the mainstream media, they're talking about that it seems that Donald Trump, the administration, is talking about the Ukrainians doing that. You see the mainstream media trying to blame that on Donald Trump and his administration. Who was behind this, and what was the objective of releasing the document?
Oh, well, we don't know. There's not just one document. There are multiple versions out. So there's a version leaked to Axios and the Financial Times. I think that was leaked most likely by Keith Kellogg. A version that they presented. Then you have the one that came out of that was presented by this Ukrainian representative, member of their Rada, their version of Congress. So there's getting the Ukrainian position out there. What's clear is Russia has not had a signed, complete document. Russia didn't leak it. I think there was some initially. Pepe Escobar was told by some that thought Kirill Dmitriev leaked it. I don't think that's accurate at all. And now watching what we've seen unfold, so there are multiple versions floating around, and Russia has received something, but Russia has not signed off on anything yet, and it's waiting to see what they get officially. I haven't seen the news yet today with respect to the meetings in Geneva, but they're supposed to be hammering out sort of a new version to get Ukraine on board, and then if they can get Ukraine on board, they're going to try to do what I call Minsk 3, present Russia with a new agreement that'll fix everything. Trust us. I don't think this is going to produce. This is not going to produce a negotiated outcome. Despite
What do you
Go
what do
ahead.
you mean by Minsk tree? Because the identity of the two are far apart. They're not similar at all.
Well, what I mean by Minsk 3 is Remember how Minsk 2 came about. The Ukrainian army got beat. It was getting clubbed and defeated at what was called the Battle of the Balsava. And that took place in January, early February of 2015. And because Ukraine was actually facing a tremendous defeat, you had increased pressure from the United States, but particularly from the Europeans, from Germany and from France, to cobble together what was then known as Minsk 2. They were the brokers for that agreement. The agreement was actually signed um, between the government of Ukraine and then the representatives of Donetsk and Luhansk. Uh, Russia was then a guarantee of it, and the French and Brits were supposedly guarantors of it, as well as I think Lukashenko out of Belarus. Well, then, as was admitted in December of 2022, Merkel and Hollande both said, yeah, we were just trying to buy Ukraine some time, basically so it could rebuild its army to continue to attack Russia. So how is this similar? Now, on a much larger scale, Ukraine is losing the war, and the West wants to try to save it. And they're trying to save it with some, trumped up peace agreement. And, because underlying this is the belief on the part of the West that Russia's economy is suffering and that Russia actually is looking for a way to end this war because it just can't stand the pressure. Oh my God, please get us out. I mean, it's such a load of crap. So Putin is willing to have a negotiated settlement, but it's going to be on Russia's terms. Russia is not in a position where it has to make sacrifices or concessions. It's made it very clear. We're going to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. And we're going to do it either diplomatically or militarily, but we're going to do it, and they will do it. That's what the West continues to not understand.
Actually, Putin came out and said that the 28-point document can be the basis for for the negotiations, because he didn't want it to reject the document.
Right.
It's a diplomatic, diplomatic sort of attitude on the part of the Russian president. But what is in that document, in your opinion, that could resonate with Russians?
Not a lot. Withdrawing NATO and holding new elections. Even what's in that document falls way short of what Russia is going to require. There's the belief that I think one of the latest versions of, again, it depends on which version we're talking about. But one version suggests that even in the Donetsk, they'll freeze the line of conflict in place and then actually build a wall, build a goddamn wall to separate the sides and then have a neutral zone. Russia's not going to agree to do that. I mean, it's crazy. So, you've got that. Or the Ukrainian legislator or member of the Rada, his version that was leaked stipulated that Ukraine could have a 600,000 man army. Russia's not going to agree to that at all. That they actually had an agreement in 2022, and I think we talked about this on Friday briefly, that the Ukrainian military armed forces would be reduced to 85,000. Yeah, Russia might agree to that, but 600,000? Hell, Ukraine doesn't even have 600,000 men right now, especially trained men. So this is it depends on the version of the document we're talking about. So what Russia is looking for is recognition that the territory, these former oblasts that are now part of the Russian Republic, that they're permanently part of Russia. They want that recognition. But again, this is this isn't I think it's overall, it's just an exercise in futility. It's gonna fill the news cycle this week, and, people get, talking about it, but it's meaningless. There's not going to be, in my view, uh, a diplomatic solution to this. It's just, Ukraine is not willing to accept Russia's terms, and Russia's going to have to enforce those terms militarily.